What's up, guys, and welcome to another edition of Gamescript. Looking at the Sunday night matchup between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Atlanta Falcons. And we have a game where there are two guys with clearly great matchups. One has a lot of ownership in the captain, and one has next to nothing. And we'll get into it after this. What's up, guys? Simon Edwards at Pumacom with Heat Seeker Sports, and you're watching Gamescript. Going to go over the Kansas City Chiefs versus the Atlanta Falcons. They're playing in Atlanta. We got a 46.5 point total with Kansas City as 3-point favorites. Make sure to hit that like button. We're going to be going through the DraftKings player pool and building some lineups in this show. So make sure to hit that like button. Give me the 30 likes, and I can put out a shorter video later on with my favorite picks on the slate. Make sure to subscribe to the channel because you're not going to want to miss that short video when it comes out later on. You're going to need to subscribe to the channel, and you want to hit the alerts button so you get the alert. It usually comes out about an hour or so before lock. And you want to help me get to 1,000 subscribers. I'm at just about 900 right now, so I'm 100 short. So help me get to 1,000 subscribers. I appreciate that. Got a game that's they're playing it in Atlanta, and Arthur Blank, I believe, is getting inducted into the Circle of Fame or whatever they call it. So should be, at least for Arthur Blank's sake, a exciting game tonight in Atlanta. And who knows how the team is going to come out for the owner of the team. Maybe they play a little bit harder. Maybe they put up a better effort tonight, but we'll see what happens. Let's get into this breakdown here. So Kansas City has been a lot of the same as last year, where kind of came into the season expecting higher things, better things from them over what they did last year, more of an offensive output and everything like that. But it's kind of been more of the same as last year. We haven't really seen Patrick Mahomes deliver one of those elite fantasy performances that we got used to before they lost Tyreek Hill. Pretty much, like, they haven't really been able to figure it out since they got rid of him as far as the offense goes. Their defense has still been great, but their offense has been a little bit sluggish. You can see that in the points he's put up in the first couple weeks. 16 DraftKings points in week 1 versus Baltimore, and 14.94 last week versus Cincinnati. But of course, with Patrick Mahomes, he could come out of his shell at any time. You never know, when he's going to put up a big game. And he has a decent matchup to do it tonight. Atlanta's been giving up 18.4 DraftKings points a game to quarterbacks. So the matchup is not bad for Patrick Mahomes. The problem is going to be his salary. If you're looking at his salary, we're looking at a $15,000 in the captain and $10,000 in the flex. So that's a little bit restrictive for tonight's build. It's going to be a little bit tricky to build lineups tonight. The salaries, there's a lot of guys in play that are expensive, so it's going to be hard to build lineups, but we'll do that later on, and I'll show you a couple paths, options that I might be going in tonight, based on what I see for matchups and everything. Bijan Robinson is the most expensive guy on the slate. Bijan, he's been really good. He's got 16 points in each game so far. As far as touchdowns, I don't see any touchdowns yet. So Bijan hasn't gotten any touchdowns yet, but he's still got 16 DraftKings points even without those touchdowns. Not the best matchup for Bijan tonight. Kansas City has only allowed 15.2 DraftKings points a game, or 15.5 DraftKings points a game to the running back position. But I'm not overly concerned with that, because if you look at who they've faced, Kansas City so far has faced Cincinnati last week, which was Zach Moss and Chase Brown as running backs. Nothing too spectacular there. And in week 1, they played Baltimore, but they had enough of a lead so that they were able to take Derrick Henry out of the game. Derrick Henry wasn't really worked into that game that much, which was a little bit surprising. But if you remember last year, the weakness of Kansas City that we were targeting a lot was their running defense, and that was for a good portion of last year. They ended up getting it cleaned up a little bit towards the end. They ended up allowing 18.4 DraftKings points a game to the running back position, but for a time there, that was where you wanted to attack Kansas City. And Bijan Robinson is much better running back than anyone that they've faced so far this season. So Bijan Robinson is still in play, even though he's 10-6. But we can play around with these lineups and see which guys kind of fit in the direction that we want to go. Rashee Rice, the guy I talked about at the top of the show, he's going to be the highest owned captain option, or at least the second highest owned after maybe Patrick Mahomes. But he's been doing really well, and he's got a great matchup. Atlanta runs a lot of zone coverage, which Rashee Rice has done really well against. And cover 3, I believe, is the defensive scheme that they use, and Rashee Rice has dominated that scheme as well. So Rashee Rice is primed to have a great game against Atlanta tonight. So, keep him in your player pool and keep him in captain consideration, even though he's going to be highly owned. Kirk Cousins came alive last week. I was reading his stat. He's actually done really well in primetime games, the last 6 games or so that he's played. He's done well. And last week, he ended up putting up 17.5 points against Philly. And, they just snuck in a win at the end of that game. Kirk Cousins was a ghost for most of the game. And then that last drive, he ended up driving 50 yards in like 30 seconds or something to get them in scoring position and to steal that game from Philadelphia last week. But, Kirk Cousins, they adjusted the style of play with Kirk Cousins. They had him under, shotgun for week 1 for a majority of the game. And then last week, they got him involved a lot more in, motion and play action. So a lot better performance by Kirk Cousins last week. So it seems like the adjustment that they made seemed to work. So, the similar thing with Aaron Rodgers week 2, coming back from that Achilles injury. He did really well in week 2. Cousins, he does have those primetime concerns, but he's in a matchup that is not not too restrictive. The Kansas City Chiefs have been allowing 21.2 DraftKings points a game to the quarterback position, which, might put Cousins a little bit favorable position tonight because Atlanta's got a pretty good defense. And, if him and Mahomes are, going to be projected for around the same amount of points, you get a $1,000 discount by putting in Cousins over Mahomes. So just keep that in mind tonight. Drake London does not have a great matchup. Kansas City, continues to be dominant against wide receivers. They're only allowing, 19.3 DraftKings points a game to wideouts. So, not horrible, but it's a middling situation. And Drake London should have McDuffie on him tonight, so he's going to have the most difficult matchup in this Atlanta receiving core. So Drake London, at 8,800, you can kind of maybe work him in where he works for your game script. But I'm not going to go all out to get Drake London in lineups tonight. Travis Kelce, his matchup is pretty good. Like, Atlanta's been allowing 10.4 DraftKings points a game to tight ends, but it kind of depends on how much usage Kelce's going to get. But Kelce in prime time, I would never go against that. He hasn't looked too great this season, but we're only 2 weeks in. 6.4 DraftKings points against Baltimore and 1.6 DraftKings points against Cincinnati. If Atlanta decides to put a lot of focus on Kelce, that would take him out a little bit, obviously. But Kelce is definitely in play. And 8,200, that's not a horrible salary given what we know that he can deliver. He shouldn't be cheaper than Drake London, that's for sure. Drake London, let's look at his game logs. 17.4 DraftKings points last week against Philly, that weak secondary, and then 3.5 against Pittsburgh. Atlanta's defense might be a little bit closer to Pittsburgh, or Kansas City's defense might be a little bit closer to Pittsburgh than Philly. So, maybe somewhere in that mid range there, maybe around like 15 DraftKings points, which could still be enough to get him in an optimal lineup. Xavier Worthy. Worthy disappeared after week 1. He had 4.2 DraftKings points last week, but he still had 4 targets, which is good. Actually, more targets than he had in week 1. And it looks like Hollywood Brown, could potentially miss the season now, which sucks for our best ball teams. But Worthy, his matchup, same as Rice, basically. Rice is more in the slot where the Falcons are giving up 12.4 DraftKings points a game to slot receivers. Worthy has a more difficult matchup outside, where Kansas City or Atlanta's only given up 11.6 DraftKings points a game. And Atlanta is consistent with last year. They were only giving up 7.3 DraftKings points a game last year to wideouts. So, not looking good for Worthy, but, he's also expensive at $8K. So, Worthy's going to be, given the volume that he gets, he's going to be a tough guy to work in tonight. Kyle Pitts is another guy who's interesting. Pitts has not really done anything this year. He had 11.6 DraftKings points in week 1 and 5 against Philly last week, but he does have the best matchup on the slate. Kansas City has given up 29.3 DraftKings points a game to tight ends. And the beautiful thing about Kyle Pitts tonight is he's projected at around 3% ownership in that captain spot. I think he has burned so many people like throughout his career, basically. First year, he had a pretty good year, had 1,000 yards in his rookie year, and he's been hurt in, I guess it's like two seasons since. And so he's finally healthy this year, but has not been doing anything. And the scheme that he's in does not necessarily favor like a tight end of his archetype. So it hasn't really given him an opportunity yet to break out. But this would be the matchup to break out for Kyle Pitts. And he is a cheap captain. He's 7K in the flex, so be about like 10K in captain. But we're going to need cheap captains tonight if you want to put together a lineup that is going to be competitive. So Kyle Pitts is definitely in play tonight, and we'll mess around with lineups with him and the captain a little bit later on. So Carson Steele takes over for Isaiah Pacheco, at least on the early down work. Pacheco is out indefinitely with I believe a broken leg. So Carson Steele has come in. He was getting rushing attempts even when Pacheco was not hurt, and he was looking not too bad. And this fantasy points don't really do justice to how he's looked. But he got 1.4 DraftKings points against Cincy and 0.3 against Baltimore. But Kansas City seems to like him, but he is 6,400 tonight, so that is expensive, and it's going to be tough to get him in. So let's move on to this next game or next player. Get the spinning ball here. Darnell Mooney at 6,200. He had a big week last week. I was putting him in lineups in the Gamescript show last Monday or whenever it was, if you guys watched that. So ended up pivoting to Kyle Pitts on my shorter video, which ended up being a mistake because Mooney ended up going off. But he is in a matchup against the Chiefs, who are only allowing 4.8 DraftKings points a game to slot receivers. So I like Mooney a little bit less this week. Not overly excited about him. He runs, he's running 39% of his routes from the slot. He does run a lot on the outside too. where the Chiefs are giving up 19.3 DraftKings points. I think given the salary difference between him and London, I might even favor Mooney over London. But, we'll get to that when we start building lineups. Going to skip through all these quarterbacks. P. Ryan, should get a decent amount of the passing work in this offense. He's cheaper than Steele at 5,400. So, that could put P. Ryan in play tonight if we think that Kansas City is going to need to pass to the running back a little bit more than usual. As I mentioned, the Chiefs are only giving up they're giving up 15.5 DraftKings points a game this season so far, or 15.2 DraftKings points a game this season so far to running backs. That's Atlanta's defense, what they're giving up. So not as great a matchup for P. Ryan as, we'd like on paper. But, again, that could be, just a matter of the opponents they faced as opposed to, like them making a significant improvement on their run defense this year. Tyler Algier, I'm not too interested there. The kickers, both are interesting. Atlanta's got a good defense. Mahomes can move the ball regardless, so they get in situations where they stall out before they hit the red zone, or they stall out in the red zone. Butker comes into play for sure. Same with Koo. I think the Falcons, they have the weapons to move the ball. As I mentioned, they're playing in Atlanta. They're playing in a dome. There are a lot of things that benefit kickers in this game, and I think both kickers are solid kickers. Koo got 10 DraftKings points last week. He had 4 the week before that, but he's a capable kicker, and we could see like a field goal fest tonight based on the defenses and the offenses that we have playing. Chiefs defense, not overly excited to play them, but I don't hate them. Like if we build those game scripts where Cousins struggles a little bit against the Chiefs in prime time, but Chiefs defense at 4,400, they're not a terrible price there. Ray McLeod has that slot matchup that I mentioned earlier, where the Chiefs are only giving up 4.8 DraftKings points a game to the slot. So not overly enthusiastic about Ray McLeod, but he's been getting a ton of targets. 5 targets last week, 7 targets the week before that. Those are all Kyle Pitts targets going to Ray McLeod. So, he's kind of been a thorn in our side if we've started Pitts in week 1 or week 2. But maybe tonight we get a different outcome. Falcons defense, less interested in them than I am in the Chiefs defense, but they are 3,400, and Mahomes has been sluggish in this offense. So, I wouldn't rule out the Falcons defense. I wouldn't take him out of the player pool. Kareem Hunt, I don't believe he's playing tonight. He won't be elevated to the active roster, so don't worry about having Hunt in your lineups. Justin Watson with Marquise Brown being out, Watson is kind of filling in as that wide receiver 3, I believe. Let me double check and see where he's at. Watson is, he's the wide receiver 3. Him, Rice, and Worthy are in those 3 wide receiver sets. Looks like Watson lines up mostly on the left side of the field, which looks like the best matchup out of all the receivers for Kansas City as far as the wideouts. So, Justin Watson does not have a bad matchup tonight. He's a guy that we can leave in our player pools at 2,800, but he's, again, one of those thin volume Kansas City guys. Kansas City, we were hoping to clear that out with Marquise Brown and Worthy, joining the fray this year, but it looks like we're getting more of the same with these, second tier wide receivers on the Chiefs, not really standing out too much except for Worthy's week 1 performance. Noah Gray, not really interested there. Smith-Schuster, not interested there. Just more clutter in that wide receiver core for the Chiefs. Ingram, they elevated Ingram. but I'm not interested there. And Sky Moore, another one of those guys. So a bunch of scrubbier guys as you go down. Not really interested in any of them. And I don't see anyone we can dumpster dive for today. So let's go ahead and build this lineup. Make sure to hit that like button. 30 likes will trigger a shorter video later on where I can give you more complete thoughts on where I'm at right before the slate locks. And you're going to want to subscribe to the channel. Help me get to 1,000. I'm at about 900 right now. I'm only 100 away. I wanted to get there before week 4. So make sure to hit that subscribe. Help me out. If you've made money on these shows, week 1, we crushed. Week 2 was pretty good. Week 3, have yet to get a hit yet on week 3, but maybe this will be the first one. But make sure to hit the subscribe and you sign up for alerts to get the shorter video, get the alert for the shorter video when it comes out later on. And tweet me screenshots. If you hit in the last few shows, I know a bunch of people have been messaging me on YouTube chat or YouTube Messenger and just the comment section, basically, talking about the hits that you guys have gotten. Make sure to tweet that to @Pumacom or @HeatSeeker Sports. So follow those accounts and tweet me at those accounts so I can retweet you guys and we can kind of show off some of the results that we're getting on these shows. All right, so let's start this one off with Rice, who'll be a more popular captain. We'll do a more chalky build on this one. I think a lot of people are going to have Mahomes in there. And if we wanted to put in Robinson in there too, let's see where that leaves us at 5K per guy. I think Butker would be an easy guy to fit in there. We got Mahomes, Rice, and Butker with Robinson. That's going to leave us still with 5K per guy. This is where it gets a little bit trickier. We could put in the Chiefs defense in a build like this and gives us enough to put in like Pirine or Algier or Koo if you wanted to use any of those guys. Ray McLeod's also there in play. If we wanted to put in Ray with the volume that he's getting, that leaves us with 6,400. That puts us in steal range. So I think this would probably be a popular build tonight. Rashee Rice, Mahomes throwing to him. We got Butker and we got Steele. So we got basically all the points accounted for potentially on the Chiefs. And then on the Falcons side, we got Bijan Robinson and Ray McLeod. I mean, I think that's a really solid build. I think that will be a popular build tonight probably, but that's a direction that you can go tonight for a chalkier build. If you want to get a little bit different with it, maybe we take out Mahomes and maybe we put in Kyle Pitts based on Kyle Pitts' performance or tight end performance against Kansas City. That puts us at 3 Atlanta guys. We got Rice and we got Butker. We got 9,400. We could put in Cousins in this lineup if we wanted a quarterback and we can't afford Mahomes. If we put in Cousins, that gives us a 4-2 build in favor of Atlanta. You could put in London in this build. You could put in Kelce. There's a lot of different ways you can go if you're fading Mahomes or fading both quarterbacks in this case for that matter. So there's a few different directions we can go with Rashee Rice. But I think with Rice, like you can build him for any direction that you want to go. You can build him for a blowout. Well, maybe not necessarily a blowout. You could blow him. You could you could build him for a Kansas City favored direction. You can build him for a Kansas City playing from behind direction. Like there's all sorts of different routes you can go there. So let's clear that out. Let's go with Kyle Pitts in the captain, like I mentioned earlier. I like Robinson still. I like Rice. I'm probably going to have Rice and Pitts in most of my lineups tonight. I just like their matchups the best. We're going to put in Butker because I just think that it could be a field goal fest tonight. Now, in this situation, I'm left with 7,150. I could put Cousins in And that leaves with me 5,300. That gives you an option for Algier, Koo, Chiefs D, Ray McLeod. Gives you a bunch of options there. All of them are pretty good. And this is us kind of projecting Rice to get the majority of the work, the majority of the volume for Kansas City. But this puts Pitts in that captain spot. And he's going to be a low-owned captain. He has the best matchup on the slate. So, he's a guy that we're going to want to at least consider in the captain. I think a lot of you guys will probably want to see what a Bijan lineup looks like. So let's put Bijan in the captain there. Let's put Rice in there again. And we'll put Pitts in there again. So in a build like this, I'm still going to put one of these kickers in. I think one of these kickers is going to show up in the optimal. I got a feeling. I'm going to go with Butker in this because we want Bijan to be getting touchdowns. So Butker and Rice, we want Kansas City in this case to be getting more field goals. So we're left with 6,200 per guy. This situation, we could go with Kelce maybe. If we go with Kelce, that's going to leave us with 4,300. We can go with McLeod in that situation. Falcons D. There's some options there. But let's take Kelce out. Let's put in Mahomes to see where that leaves us. 2,500 there. You just got these terrible options in that situation. Maybe we put in Cousins. Maybe Bijan's getting receiving touchdowns. You put in Cousins, you're left with 3,500. You got the Falcons D in that situation. Watson, who we mentioned earlier. Guys like that. So, there's still a lot to kind of work through to kind of figure out a direction with this slate. But I think it's going to be a closer game. I think that, like Atlanta's not necessarily going to be out of this game. It's a pretty close total, 3-point total, 46.5 point total, 3 points in favor of Kansas City. So there's, expecting a back and forth kind of situation in this game. And you can definitely build for something like that by putting in offensive weapons on both sides and kickers. If you don't have quarterback exposure, make sure to get kickers in there, at least one kicker in there. So, check that out. Make sure to hit the subscribe button. Give me the 30 subscribes so we can put out that shorter video later on. And sign up for an Underdog account, because you sign up an Underdog account using the promo code SEEK, SEEK. They're going to match you 50% up to $1,000. So if you put in $2,000, they're going to match you on $1,000. They're going to give you $1,000 for free. And that's going to be really handy for, these pick'ems that I've been doing. I did another pick'em on my main slate this week. I did one on week 1. Week 1 we cashed. I haven't checked to see where we're at on week 3 yet. But I'll be doing those throughout the year. And also, more importantly, when playoff best ball comes around, you want to have your account loaded because we're going to be doing a lot of playoff best ball on this channel. And that's one of my favorite games to play. If you watched the show last year, we crushed on that. Spread joined me on a lot of those shows, and we were on top of the Bills. We were on top of a bunch of teams before they got to the playoffs that everybody had written off, and it set us up really well before, like the Bills ended up getting eliminated by Kansas City, and we had a few other teams that were in really good spots, but they ended up getting eliminated early too. But we were able to make the projection on teams getting to the playoffs and got huge, huge discounts on those drafts. So make sure to sign up for that Underdog account, and we will continue it this year. All right, guys, thanks for watching, and hit that like button and subscribe to the YouTube channel.